Welcome to the Stoic Golden Tribe, where enduring wisdom meets the strength of presence, and where we uncover the truths modern society refuses to teach men. In the chaos of modern dating, silence is often misunderstood. But what if I told you that your silence, intentional, grounded, and unwavering, can echo louder in a woman's mind than any words you speak? When you don't chase, when you don't react, when you stay rooted in your frame, something powerful happens. Not just in your world, but in hers. This video is about the unseen storm you trigger when you choose silence over chasing, discipline over desperation, and mystery over emotional outbursts. We'll uncover what really happens in her mind when you stay silent, and why that silence can be more attractive, more haunting, and more effective than any line or message you could send. This is not about playing games. This is about mastering presence, emotional control, and the psychological power of stillness. This is where ancient masculine wisdom meets modern reality. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how to use silence not as a weapon, but as a mirror that reveals her truth and strengthens yours. If you're ready to level up your awareness, emotional intelligence, and power as a man, then this video is for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Stoic Golden Tribe. And in the comments, tell us, have you ever stayed silent and been surprised by how she reacted? Chapter 1. The moment you went silent, what she immediately feels. Silence from a man is not emptiness, it's pressure, it's presence. And for many women, especially in today's world, it's unfamiliar, even unsettling. Why? Because most men talk too much, text too fast, chase too eagerly. They give away their power the moment emotions rise. But when you stay silent, that silence echoes. Let's break this down deeply. Imagine you've been seeing a woman for a while. Maybe there's tension, a disagreement, or even a moment where she pulls back. In that moment, most men react. They send a long paragraph explaining themselves. They ask, "What's wrong?" They try to fix it. But you go quiet. Not cold, not bitter, just calm, controlled, stoic. What happens in her mind? At first, she might feel powerful. He's not responding, maybe he's weak. But then hours pass, a day, two, and you're still silent, still unbothered. Suddenly, the script flips in her brain. Her internal voice changes from confidence to confusion. Why isn't he chasing me? Is he losing interest? Did I go too far? Wait, but does he not care anymore? This is the moment your silence begins to do something no argument, no explanation, no desperate text ever could. It forces her to reflect on her behavior, on your value, on what you didn't say, because in that space where you don't speak, her mind fills in the blanks, and women have powerful imaginations. Your stillness becomes the mirror to her own chaos. As the old Stoic saying goes, he who speaks because he cannot bear silence has already lost. In emotional moments, men often lose themselves. They react from fear, not wisdom. They chase validation instead of standing in value. But ancient warriors knew better. The Spartans, for example, were trained from youth to speak few words, but those words were sharp, deliberate, and meaningful. Silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Modern men could learn from that. Because when you remain composed and quiet, it shows you are not shaken. You are not emotionally hijacked. You're not a boy needing attention. You're a man with standards. You are not punishing her with silence. You are rewarding yourself with peace. Let's look at a real-world example. Josh, a successful architect in his mid-30s, had been dating a woman for 3 months. Things were going well until she started testing him, cancelling plans, delaying responses. Most men would confront or plead. But Josh did something rare. He said nothing. No reaction, no emotional spike. He simply focused on his work, his gym, his peace. 3 days later, she messaged him first. "Hey, I've been thinking, are you okay?" Why? Because in his silence, she had to feel his absence. She had to imagine what it meant. That silence spoke louder than any confrontation. And when she came back, it was with a different tone. Respect, curiosity, humility. This doesn't mean every silent moment guarantees her return. That's not the point. The goal isn't manipulation, it's revelation. You're not trying to make her come back. You're creating space to see who she really is when you stop chasing. And more importantly, you're seeing who you become when you stop overgiving. Here's the core principle. A man who can stay calm when disrespected, patient when ignored, and focused when tested is rare and magnetic. Because in silence, you reveal whether your presence was a gift or just noise. And if she doesn't return or she chooses distance, good. Then silence became your filter. You didn't lose her, you lost someone who never truly valued your depth. Too many men fear silence because they fear being forgotten. But the truth is, if your presence was powerful, your silence will be unforgettable. Let's reflect on this. Do you know how much emotional strength it takes to not explain yourself? To not chase, to not clarify every detail? That's not weakness, that's self-mastery. The men who change women's minds without saying a word are not the ones sending one last message. They're the ones who know their worth, remain grounded and walk away with their head high if needed. She may not admit it, but your silence unsettles her for one reason, because it makes her realize you are not emotionally dependent. And that is rare. That is powerful. So the next time you feel tempted to speak when emotions run high, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I speaking to seek control or to share wisdom? If it's the first, say nothing. Let your silence speak the truth. Drop a comment below if your silence ever revealed someone's true colors. Chapter 2. The psychological impact of silence. Why it drives. Her crazy silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of power. And in the realm of relationships, silence becomes a psychological trigger, especially for women who are used to attention, validation, and emotional feedback from men. You see, when a woman is used to men reacting, chasing, or constantly proving themselves, she becomes conditioned to expect a pattern. When you break that pattern, she doesn't know how to respond. Your silence becomes an unfamiliar signal, and the mind naturally becomes obsessed with what it cannot explain. This is where psychology kicks in. In neuroscience, there's a term called cognitive dissonance. It happens when a person experiences mental discomfort from holding two conflicting thoughts at the same time. When you stay silent, especially if she's used to your engagement, her brain starts spinning. She expected one outcome, but your response, or lack of it, doesn't match that. So what does she do? She replays your last words, she overanalyzes your tone, she scrolls through old texts, she checks your status, all because she needs closure, and silence denies her that closure. It's like an itch she can't scratch. But here's the deeper truth. This only happens if you are a man of value. If you are grounded, if you carry emotional intelligence, presence, and purpose. Your silence only disturbs her when your presence mattered. That's why the silent man must first be the strong man. Because weak silence, silence born of fear or insecurity, feels like avoidance. But strong silence, rooted in calm and self-respect, becomes magnetic. It makes her wonder, it makes her reflect. Let's take a real-world comparison. Think about a skilled poker player. He doesn't need to talk. He watches, he waits. His silence builds tension at the table. It's not passive, it's strategic. And the longer he stays silent, the more the others reveal themselves. Your silence with women works the same way. You're not running, you're observing. Let's revisit ancient wisdom. In Eastern philosophy, the Tao teaches the power of non-action. Wu Wei. It means effortless action, or doing through not doing. When applied to relationships, this doesn't mean you avoid responsibility. It means you stop forcing outcomes. You create space for the truth to unfold. That's what silence does. It removes noise and reveals intentions. Think about that woman who gave you mixed signals, hot one day, cold the next, pulling you close, then pushing you away. When you stop responding, she's forced to confront her own inconsistency. No more games, no more attention, just the mirror of her own behavior staring back at her. That's what makes your silence feel loud. Remember, the quieter you become, the more she hears herself. And sometimes, what she hears shocks her. That's why silence can be a test of emotional depth. It reveals which women are capable of accountability and which ones only chase validation. It separates the genuine from the manipulative, and it reveals you too, because silence isn't just for her growth, it's for yours. In silence, you reconnect with your standards. You find your emotional footing. You remember your mission. That's when your mind gets sharper. Your emotions settle. Your boundaries strengthen. And from that place, you don't need to argue, explain, or beg. You choose when to speak and when to walk. Marcus, a young entrepreneur, had a woman in his life who constantly tested his boundaries. One night, she stormed out during an argument, expecting him to chase her. But he didn't. He stayed in his apartment, made dinner, and journaled. No text, no call. She messaged him the next morning. "You don't care?" He responded 2 hours later, calmly. "I care deeply, but I don't chase chaos." That one sentence, built on hours of silence, shifted the entire dynamic. Why? Because she felt something rare, a man who could love her without losing himself. And that's the goal, to be a man who is emotionally available but never emotionally desperate. Your silence should not come from spite, but from strength. It should never be a punishment, but a boundary. And when you operate from that place, her mind can't help but race, because you are no longer predictable. You are no longer emotionally entangled. You've become what women secretly crave, a man with inner gravity. Now let's be clear, not every woman will respond positively to your silence. Some will lash out, some will ghost, some will move on. And that's okay, because silence is a filter. If she vanishes when you stop chasing, it means you were never chosen, you were just convenient. But the ones who value your depth will notice. They will feel your presence more when you say let. That's when your silence becomes a test of her maturity. Can she communicate instead of manipulate? Can she lean in instead of pull away? Can she match your emotional strength? Those are the women worth leading, worth building with, worth growing with. And that's why silence is never about playing games. It's about clarity. You're not disappearing, you're discerning. You're not ghosting, you're growing. You're not avoiding the world, you're choosing peace over noise. Drop a comment below if your silence ever made her think twice. Chapter 3. Why masculine silence creates feminine reflection. Let's take this deeper. At the core of masculine energy is stillness, an unshakable presence. At the core of feminine energy is movement, emotion, expression, and response. When you, as a man, master silence, you're not just creating mystery, you're awakening her most feminine response, reflection. This is the forgotten truth of polarity. When a man stands firm in his silence, he becomes the calm eye in the storm. And the feminine, which often thrives in emotional chaos and verbal stimulation, begins to spin inward. She begins to feel her own emotions more deeply. She starts questioning, wondering, processing, not because you forced her to, but because your silence gave her space. Here's what most modern men miss. Women today are bombarded by noise, social media, validation, attention, DMs, likes. It's constant. So when you go quiet, when you detach from the validation game, you create something rare, psychological tension. And what does tension do? It creates curiosity, it creates desire, but most importantly, it creates contrast. In a world full of men who chase, beg, and over-explain, your restraint becomes unforgettable, your silence becomes sacred, and that contrast, that's where her reflection begins. Let's ground this in real experience. Think about this. How many times has a woman pulled away, maybe stopped replying as quickly or gave you cold energy, and instead of reacting, you simply paused? You didn't send a double text, you didn't ask, "Is something wrong?" You simply kept living your life, centered and unfazed. And what happened? Suddenly she pops back in. A random message, a meme, a question. "Hey, I was just thinking about you." Why? Because your silence forced her to sit with her own actions, with the energy she created. Your lack of reaction made her realize, this man doesn't operate like the others. And now she has to chase the clarity you already live in. Let's bring in ancient wisdom. In the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, we find this timeless line: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. be one. A good man doesn't need to constantly assert himself through noise. He is known by his stillness, his focus, and his choices. When a stoic man removes himself from emotional drama, it isn't detachment, it's discipline. Silence, in this context, becomes an act of strength. You're not withdrawing love, you're protecting your peace. Because here's a hard truth most men learn too late. The man who always speaks first often loses the power of presence. You've seen this play out before. You're talking to a woman, things are going well, and suddenly she becomes distant. Instead of chasing, you pull back. She senses the silence. At first, she may ignore it. But as the days pass and you remain grounded, she begins to feel the emotional gap. She realizes your energy is not chasing her. And that's when reflection begins. Not regret, not manipulation, real reflection. She starts asking, was I unfair? Did I misread him? Did I just lose something rare? That's the impact of masculine silence. It triggers feminine honesty. Let's look at a powerful example. Daniel, a calm and self-aware man in his early 40s, dated a younger woman who thrived on emotional highs and lows. Whenever tension arose, she'd pull back, waiting for him to chase. But Daniel didn't. He'd respond with kindness, but never neediness. When she pulled away, he didn't panic. He simply stayed focused on his purpose, spent time in nature, and remained still. 3 weeks later, she returned, not with games, but with humility. She admitted she had expected him to beg. She realized he was the first man who didn't. That silence made her reflect, not just on him, but on herself. And that's what changed everything. Because men, here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with noise, they fall in love with presence. And silence, when used wisely, is pure presence. It's you saying, I don't need to prove anything, I know who I am. It's you saying, if she doesn't value me now, she'll realize it in silence. Or she never will. It's you saying, I choose peace over performance. And that is rare masculine energy. The best part? This silence doesn't just affect her. It strengthens you. It trains your nervous system to stay calm in emotional storms. It rewires your brain away from validation seeking. It reconnects you to your purpose, because the more you practice conscious silence, the more you realize you don't need to win her over. You only need to stay true to yourself. You become more selective, more aware, more free. And in that space, you begin to attract women who are no longer confused by your silence, but inspired by it. Drop a comment below if you've ever seen silence bring unexpected clarity. Chapter 4. When silence becomes your legacy as a man. There comes a point in every man's life when he must choose between the noise of the world and the voice of his own discipline. That's where silence becomes more than a strategy. It becomes your legacy. Because let's face it, men who constantly react, explain, and prove themselves are forgotten. But the man who knows when to speak and when to stay silent is remembered. His absence is felt. His stillness becomes a presence that lingers long after he's gone. Why? Because silence isn't just what you withhold, it's what you protect. Your time, your peace, your values. In relationships, especially with emotionally reactive or manipulative partners, silence becomes the sword and the shield. It cuts through confusion and defends your dignity. Now let's get real. There will be moments when staying silent feels uncomfortable. You'll wonder, am I being cold? Am I losing her? But in that discomfort lies your growth, because the more you learn to sit with your silence, the more you learn to stand in your truth. Here's the hard truth no one tells men today. Every time you break your silence just to feel seen, you trade your power for her approval. And what happens next? You lose respect. Not just hers, but your own. Because deep down, you know you've abandoned yourself. You've surrendered your inner strength for temporary validation. But the man who remains quiet, centered, not out of fear, but out of respect for his peace, that man becomes untouchable. Not because he plays games, but because he no longer needs the game. Julian, a military veteran turned mentor, had one golden rule. Never argue with a woman who already knows what she lost. After his last relationship ended due to emotional manipulation, he didn't engage in drama. No goodbye letters, no fights, no last texts, just silence. Months later, she reached out, shocked at how peaceful he'd remained. She said, "I thought you'd at least say something." Julian's response? "I said everything I needed to say when I showed up for you. My silence now is what you earned when you stopped showing up for me." That's legacy energy. That's a man whose silence speaks of strength, not surrender. And this is what every modern man must learn. We live in an age of endless communication, but zero connection. Attention is cheap. Words are thrown around. Feelings are faked. But silence is sacred. It tells her, I don't argue with disrespect. I don't chase confusion. I don't prove my worth. I live it. This isn't cruelty. This is clarity. Because the ultimate goal is not to make her feel anything. It's to protect the man you're becoming. A man who is calm under pressure, focused in chaos, unshaken in rejection, and grounded in truth. Your silence will not always bring her back, but it will always bring you back to yourself. And that's the most powerful return of all. Before we close, remember this. The man who speaks from pain is forgettable, but the man who stays silent from power, he's unforgettable. So the next time you feel tempted to break your silence just to be heard, pause and ask yourself, does this serve my mission or my emotion? If it's emotion, stay still. Let silence speak. Let the world react. Let her reflect. You're not responsible for how she interprets your silence. You're only responsible for the strength behind it. Because in the end, silence isn't about winning her back. It's about never losing yourself again. Drop a comment below if silence ever helped you rise above the noise.